Jamahal Hill keeps winning and moving up the light heavyweight ladder. Geoff Neal made history, and we got 2 more entries into the Hall of Ultimate Fighter names. It is Sunday, August 7th. I'm E. Spencer Kyte. He is Harry Powell, and these are the next day takeaways. Welcome back, everybody. Greetings and salutations. Friendly neighborhood Spencer man, Harry Powell, over in Southeast London in the evening. Good day, sir.
Hello.
Sitting here, doing what we do on Sundays, recapping UFC Vegas 59, rocking. Shout out to the crew, the One Bone crew, rocking the 4-year anniversary, Michael. Same as everything else that these guys produce. It is wonderfully comfortable. I love the pattern. I love the style. These guys keep me looking reasonably fresh for a dude that doesn't look fresh most of the time. These guys step my game up. Go check them out, onebone.com. Use promotional code ESK10 for 10% off your order. Become part of the One Bone family. Good sir, you did not watch this event live. You had a long day yesterday. You wisely, I guess maybe not wisely, you opted to settle in and actually sleep in the evening over the nighttime hours rather than stay up through the middle of the morning to watch these fights. I, of course, watched them, recap them for UFC.com. And we went finish after finish after finish until there were no more fights to be finished. The judges were not needed. The stoppages continued all the way through. Just on the whole, before we get into individual athletes, moments, thoughts, discussions, what'd you think when you sat down this morning and started going through these?
Obviously very impressed. You know, this felt like recently we had a Cage Warriors card over here in the UK that did the same thing. We had, I think it was a 10-fight card and 10 finishes. And that's, you know, you don't get those cards often. You know, these are special cards, special moments, and we should really look at them as such. Obviously, the reason I didn't stay up mostly was because on paper, this wasn't a card that I was super excited for. A lot of the fights fell off. And, you know, various life things occur that change the way that our schedule happens. Generally, I do stay up. Obviously, you and I often watch the streams together and do the talking and the thinking and the things. And part of the thing that I don't like about not staying up is you miss sort of the overall feeling and emotion of the card, right? When I wake up at 9 a.m. and I jump on BT Sport and I go and watch the fights, I'm not watching any commentary. I'm not watching any adverts, thankfully. I can skip through all that stuff. And I watch the card in just under 2 hours instead of 6.5 hours with 6 hours of fill, right? Because fighting wise, there was maybe 50 minutes worth of fighting the whole night, right? And I think that to me at 6 a.m. sounds horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. I want no part of that whatsoever. I don't watch fights with commentary most of the time. The only time I'll put commentary on is generally when the judges' scorecards are being read out so I can listen and understand what the judges have scored the fights, etc., etc. But I often don't even do that. I just hear what you have to say. I go and look at Shawnee's Twitter and you know, that's how I sort of bridge my things together. But yeah, overall, just some absolutely incredible performances, because this wasn't a card that was full of squash matches. Yes, it wasn't a card that was full of title changing, full of jeopardy fights. It wasn't. But what it was a card of well-matched, well put together fights. And I really enjoyed some of the performances that we'll obviously get into, but there are also some talking points that I think we get into regardless of the fights.
Right. To that community sort of element that you mentioned of what's missed when you watch it in the morning or day after, whatever the case may be. I was trying to explain this to my wife as we were talking about it, because I mentioned that you didn't stay up and you'll watch them now, and we were messaging while I was eating breakfast. And I said, like, the thing that's missed, like, I don't think I could stay up and watch fights till 6 a.m. every single Saturday, because just exhausting, and I'm old and I have to go to bed at like 10 o'clock at night most nights at the absolute latest. But I 100% would miss that interaction. Like, you and I didn't interact last night. Yes, I was on recap, so that takes a little bit more attention, and I need to pay attention and can't be yapping with you about the things as we do and being on Twitter, super involved in things like that. But it really does give you that sense when you watch it afterwards, when you go back and watch it just solo and you're not interacting with Twitter and you're not seeing everybody else react, how communal this really is and what a kind of group experience this is at times, good, bad, or otherwise.
I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I also think that prior to my work with Severe MMA, which has just ticked over the year anniversary a couple of months ago, like I didn't really get to a position of having that community aspect. You know, my name wasn't anything, not that my name is anything now, but in comparison, like, you know, I would not get any likes or any retweets or any sort of communal sharing whatsoever. But now, since working with Severe MMA, there are some people that will look at my Twitter, or some people will have a conversation with me, whether positively or negatively, as I'm tweeting through the fights. And, you know, whilst I don't necessarily do the hot takes or whatever, I generally just pose what my analytical thoughts are of what's happening during the fight and for whatever reason that thing is happening. Something that I really, really enjoy is, well, exactly that, right? It's the community aspect. It's the everyone sort of getting together and watching this thing and harmoniously enjoying, or not, the thing that we're looking at. And I think that's one of the really beautiful aspects of MMA. There's a lot of absolute garbage in MMA, a lot of really, really smelly garbage. But in some of it, there are rose petals, gorgeous, beautiful monuments of MMA. And I think that in part, the live experience, if you can't get to an actual fight night, which sometimes is also fucking garbage, by the way, but oftentimes when you're there and you're surrounded by some people that know what they're looking at and they're not fucking fighting in the crowd or lobbing beers anywhere or doing the Flair woo or just being general degenerate cunts, like that experience is nothing like what you watch at home. Whereas when you are at home and you feel connected to the Twitter community, I think that elevates the viewing pleasure of MMA.
Yeah, it certainly does. When you can have those moments of whether it's a close fight and everybody's scoring it, and you can see what people whose opinions you value and respect and want to see think about the fight, or you can have, I know there was an instance last night, my buddy out east, Craig Allen, tweeted something about Juliana Miller being 26 and, you know, going to have some trouble in the flyweight division. And I was like, look, she's 26, give her time. And we had a little discussion about that. Those are the things that I love about fight nights, and I love about the communal experience. Other things, simple things like connecting with yourself. You and I met through Twitter. You and I connected through Twitter. Dave Fretz, who did all the artwork for us for different stuff. He and I connected through Twitter, even though we apparently played hoops together 20 odd years ago when I didn't go to class at the University of Waterloo. There are wonderful moments of it. Last night felt like it's odd. I wasn't really on Twitter. It felt like a night where I really wish I was on Twitter and not necessarily on recaps, just enjoying the whole of the night as we sort of went through a fight card that, as we said, was finish after finish all the way through. We'll get into some of it. We'll start at the top as we always do. Jamahal Hill gets a fourth round technical knockout victory over Thiago Santos in the main event. Third straight win for Sweet Dreams. He's only got one loss in the UFC. He's been progressing his way up the light heavyweight ranks, sort of running pretty parallel, I think, for the most part, with Magomed Ankalaev, who won a couple weeks ago or just last weekend, even though it feels like more than just a week ago. What were your thoughts on the performance, and what are your thoughts on sort of where Jamahal Hill fits in that group, probably still just outside of the elite group at light heavyweight?
Maybe controversial, but I wasn't that impressed.
Okay, I'm very happy for you to start with that because I have to tape State of the Union with Sean tomorrow for Severe MMA. Please check that out on the Patreon when it comes out.
Absolutely.
One of my questions to him when he went searching for questions for the Q&A this week was, are you still as high on Jamahal Hill as you were? Tell me why you weren't impressed, because I know why I wasn't that impressed.
Okay, well, let me say the things that I was impressed with, right? The things that I was impressed with is he grew into the fight. he was able to take some big shots against Thiago Santos, and he was able to walk through those shots, not allowing an unwavering of the confidence that was building in the fight. I thought his get-up game was unbelievable. Really, really good. His method of finding a post, collecting his hips, controlling Santos's posture, getting inside elbow space and getting back up was brilliant. Really, really good. Now, does that translate to a Magomed Ankalaev fight? I don't know. But what I do know is that the willingness for him to not accept bottom position is brilliant. Really, really good stuff from Jamahal Hill. You didn't see him in close guard, wasting time. You didn't see him allowing himself to be put into bad positions. Every moment he was doing the right things and he was taking the risks necessary to get himself back up to his feet. If he had a back body lock, he did the risks necessary to turn himself in. Lovely stuff. I can't praise that enough.
Right.
However, when you're Jamahal Hill, I think the thing that you have to realize is you are long, you are rangy, and you are faster than most people in that division. Something that Shawnee mentioned on the Sphere MMA podcast was that Jamahal Hill is nowhere near as muscle bound as some of the other light heavyweights that you see. You think of a Jan Blachowicz, he's a big dude, right? You think of a Rakic, who's a massive human. You even look at Thiago Santos, who is a monster of a human being. And Jamahal Hill has that John Jones early look about him, who he looks athletic, but he's not the giant thighs, giant calves, giant frame man.
Right. He's not a definition guy.
No, but he uses that to his advantage because his head movement is a bit better, because he's a bit more agile on his feet. He can use that southpaw protruding stance to cut through the footwork of Thiago Santos. The things that I didn't like in the performance were, it felt as though his striking was far more sloppy in this than I have seen it in other fights. And Thiago Santos was absolutely there to be hit in this fight. It felt as though he didn't have the awareness that Thiago Santos was slowing far more rapidly than he was. And I didn't feel like he was capitalizing on situations than he could have. I didn't like that there was really a lack of variety in his striking overall. A lot of it was just 1-2 to the head. If we get in a striking battle in the exchange, in the pocket, Santos is throwing big hooks, I'm going to roll with him and I'm going to throw big hooks. I don't understand why. He has the range, he has the length, he has, in other fights, shown the cerebral ability to pull himself back, land the straight shots, and put your man on the floor.
Right.
It felt as the fight was progressing, as I said, that Santos's cardio was lacking. And I'm not getting, Jamahal Hill was getting tired too, right? We talk about often that when a fighter is going through some adversity, or when a fighter is coming to a position where his cardio is waning, you see him fall back into the tropes and the foundations of who he really is as a fighter. And what we saw of who he really was as a fighter was a more narrow stance, hands a little lower, a little bit less willing to move his head, a little bit less willing to move his feet, and more willing to stand and bang in the pocket.
Right. Little less technical, little more, let's just get after it.
Right. And that to me is not as impressive. Right. That to me tells me that there is still a little bit of work left to do. Now, he is still extremely young in his career and frankly still quite young in age for that division. So I'm not, whilst I'm being probably hypercritical, we should be, because like Shawnee, this man has championship potential. So if we're talking about a man that has championship potential, we must critique him as such. So I think that there is still a vastly high ceiling, because you don't go out against Thiago Santos, who, for the record, looked far more confident in that opening round, actually did let his hands go throughout the fight, looked far less gun shy, unless he was throwing kicks, and that's understandable. That was a Thiago Santos that was a good version of the man to beat. And he went... Go on, sorry.
Yeah, that was a better version than we'd seen in the 3 fights previous.
Right. And he still went out. He still managed to not perform at his best, and he still managed to put him away.
Right.
That's impressive, right? Something that's told, and this will be my final trope about football for the day. Over here in the UK, what's bounded about all the time is a championship level team is a team that doesn't perform anywhere near their ability, but they still grind out wins. They find a way to put the ball in the back of the net and grind out wins. And this was Jamahal Hill's performance on Saturday night.
And I agree with that completely. I agree with all of the assessment. I felt throughout and sort of said, I think at one point during the fight, it's a lot sloppier than I'm used to seeing of him. It's a lot more reaching. It's a lot more rushing. It felt like he was trying to get Thiago Santos out of there as quickly as possible. And then as you're saying, as the fight progressed, he didn't recognize soon enough that, yeah, we're both that energy meter is dropping for both of us, but his is coming down a lot quicker. And if I dial back the hurriedness, if I actually go into more of a technical, precise approach, I can probably get this done quicker.
I think one piece of coaching advice, which is not given, like this should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Trevor Whitman, Tony Ferguson, right?
Right.
I don't think we talk about this enough. Trevor Whitman says...
I mean, we reference it every single time we talk. But yes, in general, it doesn't get referenced enough.
Right. Like, because he says to Justin Gaethje, I think it's the end of the third. I think it's the end of the third. It's the end of the third or the end of the second, either one. And he said to him, look, dude, like, you're not going to put him away like this. This guy just doesn't go away like this. He's like, you're being stupid. Just go out, take 25% off those shots and just hit him. Just touch him. Just keep touching him.
Right.
He'll go away. And it feels as though Jamahal Hill doesn't have only 3 people in MMA have a Trevor Whitman in his corner. And clearly Muhammad Usman is not one of them, right? And we'll get to that later. But,
right.
When you have somebody like that, and you've seen that in the stratosphere of MMA, I feel like coaches have a duty to go, and if I can recognize that, some fucking scrub in Southeast England that's never coached a fighter in my fucking life.
Right.
I feel
that's
like
the thing you should recognize and steal.
Right. Go and be like, fuck me, lads. That's good advice. Yep. And when Jamahal Hill's going out, and is under a little bit of pressure in that first round, it looks a little bit uncomfortable and doesn't really look like he's flowing and jiving and moving in the way that he has in some other fights. Just tell him, dude, it's okay. Like, we have 25 minutes to get this done.
Yeah. I mean, was down 29-28 on all 3 cards, I believe, going into that 4th round. So, like, was in some challenging space. And that's another piece of this part of this fight that I do think we need to appreciate, that we do need to recognize and commend him on, right? He goes into the 4th round for the first time in his career. He navigates it successfully. As you said, he still gets the finish. He grinds out that win. The question I kept asking myself last night and through today is, I put, maybe not necessarily on apples to apples, that performance versus Magomed Ankalaev's last performance, right? Because Anthony Smith suffers the injury, but just the general latest few performances of those 2 gentlemen. And it feels for me like what I've seen from Ankalaev is someone who is closer to being ready from a technical precision standpoint to challenging for a title, that maybe doesn't have the upside that Jamahal Hill does. Like, I think this is one of those ceiling and floor situations where the Ankalaev ceiling is probably a little bit higher. Like, where he's at is probably a little more established right now because he's got all of the things and he can do all of the things, but it's not particularly flashy. And most of the time it's grindy and just technical. And so the ceiling might be a little bit lower, but in the next, let's say 2-3 years, 4 years, if 4 years from now, Jamahal Hill, 35, has probably had 10 more fights. That version of this guy, scary motherfucker. Championship material.
I think the big difference for me is Jamahal Hill looks like he has an element of that freak athleticism. Magomed Ankalaev looks like just a supremely technical fighter. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not downplaying that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. What I am saying, though, is that the level of athleticism needed to be very, very successful in the modern MMA game is at the level that Jamahal Hill is at, right? And when a fighter has one hitter-quitter power, which we've seen from Jamahal Hill,
Right.
and we've seen from Magomed Ankalaev too, don't get me wrong,
At times, yep,
if he
absolutely.
shot you in the face, you might be going to the shadow realm. But it feels as though Jamahal Hill is the type of fighter that the UFC likes and that the MMA fan base have been conditioned to like. I was super high on Magomed Ankalaev prior to the Smith fight, and it's well documented how high I was on him. You can ask Shawnee. And, you know, coming away from that, I felt like, okay, well, we need to dial this back just a touch. Not a ton, but just a touch. Because there are things that now when we're entering the elite echelon of this division, we have questions for. I feel as though you're absolutely right. Coming away from that Santos performance, and I think Santos last night was probably a tougher test than Anthony Smith was for Magomed Ankalaev, given that Santos showed Jamahal Hill more. He did take him down.
Right.
He did offer in the grappling scenarios. He did look to try and take his back. He did land some big hooks in those exchanges that Jamahal Hill maybe shouldn't have been in. And Jamahal Hill was like, all this is fine, dude. Like, this is fine. I'm still here. I'm still pushing. It's round 4. I'm still here.
I think that confidence, that, I hate the word, but that swagger is a part of what separates him and what puts him ahead of Ankalaev as well. There is something to be said for unwavering self-belief. Just, he says it every time, right? You guys need to stop asking questions about experience and about whether I'm ready to be here or whatnot. I'm here. I'm ready. And if no one else believes, he does. And we've seen it throughout the history of this sport and others, that as long as you believe, it's entirely possible that you just might be the one person that's right. And it feels like he's now in a position to take another step forward, or maybe a little half step forward, face another one. And like, I don't think he's getting the championship opportunity that he would like. I don't think he's getting Yuri Prochazka next. But he might get Magomed Ankalaev. He might get Jan Blachowicz. There are some opportunities, and whatever lingering questions we have, they will again be answered next time out.
Personally, I think the Ankalaev fight is the fight.
I think so as well.
The reason why I think that is I think you do Rakic Blachowicz, and then I think you do Ankalaev Hill and see what comes out. If Ankalaev goes in and smokes Jamahal Hill all the other way around, you put him in, dude. You just put him in.
Yep.
You just do the thing. Just let them do the fighting. And then if Rakic goes in, smashes Blachowicz, then you have Rakic one fight away from that title shot, right?
I mean, we've had that, and Rakic has to deal with the recovery from the injury, right? But
yeah. But I think you do that again, is what I'm saying.
I got you.
Yeah.
So we move on. Co-main event, welterweight fight. Geoff Neal goes out, gets a 3rd-round knockout win over Vicente Luque. I am not going to sit here and pat myself on the back for breaking this one down pretty well, perfectly in the Punch Drunk predictions. What I will say is that this is the version of Geoff Neal that we saw before he got damn near deathly ill. And I think going into it, we kind of forget or downplay just the drasticness of that, right? It was now 2 years ago that Geoff Neal was in the hospital, nearly dead, with sepsis, with all kinds of misery. And then at the end of the year, he fought Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He lost a fight, comes back a couple months later. He fights Neil Magny. He loses that fight. And he says, I need to take 6 months and just get my body right. It hasn't been the same since I've been in the hospital. Since he's done that, he gets a gritty win over Santiago Ponzinibbio and then has last night. This feels to me, or looked to me, like the version of Geoff Neal that we saw pre-health scare, and reminded me that this guy is somebody that can be in that Luque, Bilal Muhammad kind of range in this division, if not further up. What were your thoughts?
So, on the preview show, and again, I said this on the big podcast and I'll say it here. It's not often that I do the tooting of my own horn thing. But round one was picture perfect. The game plan that I said, if Geoff Neal's going to win, this is how he wins. So what he did just amazingly well was he started the fight, went over and was like, you come to me now. Come on, come and do the fighting. And Luque was like, okay, yeah, I'll come and do the fighting. And Geoff Neal just gave him so much space. He gave him so much rope to hang himself with. And he tightened the knot of that noose with a left hand to the nose 15,000 times in the first round. It's not often that we see Vicente Luque hurt and hurt early. It's not often that we see Vicente Luque face down on a canvas. First time ever in his career, I will say. I think the thing that impressed me so much about Geoff Neal in the first and the third round, and I do have criticisms in the second, but in the first and the third round, his ability to execute a game plan, to use his footwork, to use the cerebral nature of his striking, to use his athleticism to his advantage was astounding. Within about 2 minutes, he'd reduced Vicente Luque to two dilemmas. The dilemma is, do you want to go hell for leather after I've already hurt you with these left hands? Or do you want to stay slightly out of range and point fight with me after I've already hurt you with the left hands that I'm doing with the point fighting? Now, I don't know why Vicente Luque didn't opt to grapple at any point in the first or any point in the third, if nothing more than to offer some variety and to change the way that Geoff Neal would force Geoff Neal to change the way he was standing in his stances. But he didn't. He just kept on plodding forward and kept on throwing a couple of body kicks and a couple of jabs. And Geoff Neal in the first and third round just did so gorgeously well of cutting an angle, finding the left hand, and being in his face. He did three things with that footwork. The first was he allowed three things. The first thing, one syllable. He allowed Luque to believe that he was dominating the space. And as he walked into the pocket, Geoff Neal would move out of the pocket and land a shot. So Luque felt like, okay, I must chase him because he's constantly moving backwards. And he was chasing him onto shots. Firstly, that makes shots more impactful because you're walking onto them. Secondly, you're going to feel like you're always almost in the pocket to land your shot if you're Vicente Luque, but you're not, because Geoff Neal is always turning away, making his angle, finding his route out, moving backwards. The second thing was he would jam Vicente Luque. So instead of then exiting the pocket, he'd take a short step backwards. Luque would chase, and Neal wouldn't move anywhere. What would move is Vicente Luque's neck backwards as he's getting clicked with a left hand on the way in, right? That was absolutely gorgeous. And the third thing, and I think the third thing was probably the most impressive, and the thing that reduced down Luque to the point fighting, was Luque would throw, is always Luque throws more than one shot combos. Always. He reduced Luque to one shot combos because he was wary of where the left hand was coming. Luque then was like, okay, well, I'm going to throw body kicks at him. He'd catch a body kick, throw a left hand. He'd catch a body kick, take it all the way up high, sweep him, take him down, and start battering him. Like, the first and third round was an absolute masterclass of how to beat a pressure fighter. I think he took the Wonder Boy performance and he was like, I can do that, but with hands, motherfucker. Watch me. Gorgeous.
I agree on all fronts. I think the one thing I will say, and I think we touched on it on the Severe Preview show, you asked why Luque didn't grapple. I think we have this perception of Vicente Luque because he is such a dynamic finisher that we see him as a grappler. And I don't know. It's not to say he's not a grappler, but he's not to me, in the traditional sense of what I think of as a grappler in the MMA space. He's not a guy that necessarily initiates takedowns, initiates body locks, maybe some clinch here and there, but that's mostly from a Muay Thai position where he's looking to land strikes. Like we saw a couple times that he grabbed the Thai clinch and he's looking to land elbows and he's looking to land knees. It's not, let me get double underhooks or let me get a body lock and trip you to the floor. His submissions usually come from opportunistic situations. I've got you hurt. You're scrambling back to your feet. How's your neck? Away we go. The Michael Chiesa situation, right? Chiesa falls off the top as they're getting back up. Luque goes, oh, look, Darce choke. And away we go. It's not, I'm going to take you down, work to pass, get into a dominant position, and then finish. So I think that's a piece of it. It feels like Geoff Neal recognized, I don't necessarily have to worry about takedowns with this guy. He does just want to go, as you said, hell for leather, and come forward and be in a fist fight. And be in it, like Conan Silveira screaming at him in the corner about this isn't a bar fight. Well, that's what Vicente Luque kind of likes, is to just be in a brawl, is to just be in that Brian Barberena fight or the Mike Perry fight or whatever the case may be. And Geoff Neal and his team, Saif Saud, Ramiz Brahima, sat there and went, this is what dude's going to do. These are, as you said, the three ways that you counteract that. And for 2 rounds, Geoff Neal did it exceptionally well.
He really did. He really, really, really did. However, and we must.
Yes.
The second round, he allowed Luque all the way back in.
Gotta fix it.
And I have no idea why. I have no idea.
So his explanation after the fight, right, is, look, I sometimes kind of do that, and this is a thing I sometimes do, and can I just get by winning it kind of on points and whatever? And if you had volume on, which I don't think you probably did, Saif Saud spent the entire round shouting at him, screaming at him. They go into the corner, and Saif gets in his ass and is like, you need to go. Like, you had this dude hurt. He's back in the fight. There's no more fucking about. Like, go. I think it's an instance where you see the effectiveness of a corner and a coach who knows how to instruct their fighter in between frames and provide them with useful information. But I also think that is the worrisome point for me with Geoff Neal. Is great. The first round was wonderful, and then you sorted it back out in the third. But I mean, you were making some poor choices in terms of execution in the second that turned this from maybe a 10-8 and a one-sided fight to we might be even going into the third.
I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, I don't have any reference point as to why, when you're beating a dude that handily, you've basically not been touched for a round and
Right.
You've hurt him multiple times. You're like, let's do the thing he likes. That's cool.
Right. Let me allow him to get off. Right.
What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Yep.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. It's 100% a thing that he is going to have to address. And if I had my guesses from the relationship that I have a little bit with Saif and the crew down there, guess what Geoff Neal's doing once he gets back to the gym? You're going for 25 minutes straight. You're not going and then 5 minutes off and then going. You're just going. We're gonna work this out of you. Because as you continue to progress, there's going to be guys just like Luque that go, great, you beat the hell out of me, but I'm still here and I'm coming. And you can't take rounds off.
No, dude. Because, yeah, if you make poor decisions against a guy that's not Vicente Luque, but maybe that's Bilal Muhammad, let's say. I mean, I think Geoff Neal probably beats Bilal Muhammad. But
he's already beaten Bilal Muhammad.
Right, but like the new Bilal.
Like the current Bilal Muhammad, I think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
As he said yesterday, I don't
Right.
think Bilal wants to compete again.
No, I wouldn't if I was Bilal Muhammad, frankly. But you go and look at, let's say it's a Colby Covington.
Yeah.
Right. And Geoff Neal has the first round that he has against Colby Covington. And then he has the second round.
Right.
Dude, he might not get back up.
Right. Colby Covington's putting him on his ass and mashing him.
And we're doing the things when it gets there. Like, the things are happening, Geoff Neal, and you best be ready for the things happening. Yeah, it's absolutely something that has to change.
Right. All of that said, it's a great win. It's a great performance. I think it also is a reminder, and I think he's another case, like I said, about the illness part. Bilal Muhammad has certainly changed. He's not the same fighter as when they met for the first time or when they actually met. But that is one of those wins that when it's sitting there in the back pocket, you go, right, he beat this dude. Now, Bilal, as you said, made some changes and is a different fighter. But this win to me sort of elevates Geoff Neal into that group just outside the elite. I loved the call out of Gilbert Burns. I think it is the perfect matchup for him to ask for. I don't know if he gets it. Gilbert was like, great, finally somebody called me out. If Masvidal doesn't want to dance, cool, we can do it. Would love to see it. I think it's a great opportunity. I don't think Luque loses any ground. I don't think anyone necessarily comes away from this thinking terribly ill of Vicente Luque. I think it just kind of reassessed his ceiling and sort of reinformed where he fits in the division.
Yeah, I don't think reassess, because what it tells me is that he didn't fix the holes from the Wonderboy fight. He doesn't have a plan B. Luque is, I go forward and I do the fighting, or I get knocked out, or I get finished, or I lose, right? Like, it's not good enough. For number 6 in the welterweight division to not have a plan B, it's not good enough. Like, the thing he loses is that number 6 rank. That's what he loses.
Well, and I think it also, to me, and like, look, rankings are subjective.
What rankings?
They're mostly useless. They're mostly useless. They need to be proper rankings, need to be a large enough panel of people that are educated, intelligent about all of this, and are looking at a wide enough frame of experience, and not just doing, well, A beat B most recently, so they must be above. Doesn't matter what C has done.
You know what I mean, though, right? Firstly, what's going to happen is when the rankings come out from, the janitor that was working at the UFC, and the fans look at the rankings, and all of a sudden, Luque's not 6, he's 11. They can be like, oh, yeah, he's shit now, or that. And what it does mean is the UFC lean on those rankings when it comes to matchmaking. Fighters can choose to lean on those rankings when it helps them.
I'm not fighting that guy that's behind me. He's only ranked.
Right. Fuck that noise.
So that brings us to the Ultimate Fighter 30 finales. I'm going to lump them together. We're going to do them in one big, angry, disappointed, larger discussion. Muhammad Usman knocks out Zach Paunga in the second round with a left hook, and then an homage to Dan Henderson. Juliana Miller defeats Brogan Walker, gets a third round finish, spoiling my Miller by decision pick, but that's fine. Happy for Juju. So both of these fights, kind of messy, kind of sloppy, kind of low skill, kind of make you go, this is the best we got. This is what Tough is producing these days. This is who we're sequestering in homes for 6 weeks and then giving them 6 weeks to train and doing this. I wrote a thing on Friday saying the Ultimate Fighter is still producing talent, because I think on the whole over the last 10 seasons, there's still been some reasonable talent to come off of the show that is commensurate to some of the talent coming off of the Contender Series. Maybe not the high-end talent that comes off the Contender Series, but the middle pack talent. But we started talking about this pre-pressing record, and I said, let's just do it on the show. So let's just do it on the show. You had some thoughts. The floor is yours.
It was an absolute bag of shite. That's it. On the main podcast, me and Shawnee had a bit of a disagreement about Spivac and Serghei, right? He said that it was exactly as he thought it was going to be. It was a horrendous fight, awful. I was like, well, actually, I don't think it was that bad. I thought Spivac did some nice grappling. He did some nice takedowns. There were some good things there. And I thought Serghei did really well to not accept bottom position, and he did well to try and get back up. Obviously, it proved not to be fruitful for him in the end, but whatever. And he was like, look, you're sounding more and more like Spencer every day. And he was like, it's good to know that somebody's got some optimism. And I was like, okay, now I'm Sean. Fuck you. Tough does not produce talent. And get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? Like, okay,
right.
okay. Let me put this.
I'm going to consult the notes because I have them here with me.
Okay, let's go through this one by one because I'm just going to make one precursoral contextual point here.
Fair.
Right. 2022 is the best year for MMA ever, right? You produce me Muhammad Usman and Walker and Miller. Please give me your notes.
So, point one to that is that contrary to early iterations of The Ultimate Fighter through to whatever, let's say season 20, which feels like a 2/3 cutoff, right? There are fewer promotions and organizations competing for talent. There are fewer avenues to the UFC. There is less money being thrown around. So the best talent, the available talent pool is deeper and richer for many of those seasons, right? The UFC can throw season 20 and go, great, we're going to introduce the strawweight division. We're going to bring in 16 of the best strawweights in the world, or 13 plus Emily Kagan, Angie Hill, and Angela Magana, and throw them in there and see what happens. And suddenly we have a division and it's full of talent. So in terms of the still producing some talent, right? Season 24 gave us 5 of the 10 people that are ranked in the top 10 at flyweight. Now, I can say again, it's a new division, but it wasn't. Flyweight was happening in the UFC. They just went out and signed the best talent. But again, it's bringing in the best talent. I do not for a second will I argue that the talent coming off The Ultimate Fighter the last 10 seasons fully measures up to the talent that was produced over the first 20. But I do think there are occasional outliers that show the show is continuing to produce talent. We got Kamaru Usman through The Ultimate Fighter. We got Vicente Luque through The Ultimate Fighter. Injuries are a motherfucker, and Tatiana Suarez would probably be the strawweight champion and running things through The Ultimate Fighter. And then you have just sort of the additionals, right? A whole bunch of the flyweight division, Bryce Mitchell, Macy Chasson and Penny Kianzad, fun folks like your boy Ryan Hall, fun guys like Billy Quarantillo. It wasn't direct. He eventually came through Contenders. But I think there's still some talent. I don't think it's the A+ talent that we used to get at times, but there's still some. I don't think these two winners from Saturday night are suddenly going to become champions and contenders. I think Juliana Miller has more upside than Mo Usman. I think she can eventually progress. That was her 4th fight or 5th fight. She's 26. She's with a relatively good team. She seems to have some of the gritty, grimy, toughnessy it factor of she just doesn't mind being in a fucking fist fight, which is hard to find. Played to her strengths well. Oh, you'd like to clinch? Great. I'm better than you are. Which is a little bit of Brogan Walker not playing properly, but still. Counter, please.
A little bit. Brogan Walker has I mean,
Brogan Walker made terrible decisions.
horrendous. Like,
Also, that fight is one where if you were listening to comms, you probably throw something through your monitor. Because if you had done any research on this fight, you knew, or at least I felt, Juliana Miller wants this fight on the ground. She is the better fighter on the ground. She is happy to clinch because she will trip. She is longer. She is taller. All of the things. And as Brogan Walker goes in for the first clinch, Michael Bisping is like, Walker going right to where she wants. She should be stronger here. And Juliana Miller hits that lovely, actually, outside kind trip, like body lock. We're just going down and I'm right into half guard.
shoot me in the fucking face. On the feet, this was atrocious.
No argument.
God awful. Neither of them can throw a punch straight. Neither of them have any postural significance. Neither of them know where to put their chin. Neither of them know how to generate power from the floor. Neither of them know how to stand in a stance when they're throwing. Neither of them have any understanding of range. Horrendous. Absolutely awful, right? Then, look, if... what's Walker's first name, sorry?
Brogan.
When Brogan Walker goes in for that first clinch, I understand, right? You want to change the levels up. You want to give Juliana Miller something to think about. That's fine. No problem with that. You know, this is MMA. We must diversify our attacks. You will hear me talking about this forever and a day. When you get taken down by Juliana Miller and, you know, you clearly find that she is a superior grappler to you on the ground. Juliana Miller did some lovely things, some really, really nice stuff, beat the knee shield really well, took the inside space really well, used her head as pressuring really well, dominated the top frames really well, covered hips, did all of these things really, really nicely. And then did some of the fighting on top of that, right? Wasn't just positional dominance. She was landing shots. She was looking to land shots. She wasn't happy with just being in dominant positions or looking to be in dominant positions. She was looking to land damage. A+ for Juliana Miller. Brogan Walker then storms across the cage after going through some more torrid striking from both of them and was like, I know, let's do the same thing that wound me up in a horrendous position last time. E- level IQ. In the UK, right? There is a pass mark or a fail mark, as it is, for an exam called a U, right? You can only get a U if not only do you answer every single question wrongly, but you also spell your own name incorrectly. Brogan Walker gets a U for fight IQ, yeah? She goes over and gets hit with the same takedown 4 times. Are you
Correct.
fucking kidding me?
Correct.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Correct.
Horrific, absolutely atrocious fight IQ.
And she didn't graduate to the UFC.
Shoot me. Just awful. Like, it felt as though on the feet, Brogan Walker might have had a little bit more of power than Juliana Miller had. It felt as though if Brogan Walker had been able to maybe find some infighting, maybe look for some more tie-based clinches rather than pushing up to the fence again with Juliana Miller, and maybe look for some open space stuff where she could land some knees, maybe land some elbows, maybe do some of the dirty boxing, she may have had more success. But instead, she had more fucking, she had less IQ than 2 wood planks being burnt on a stake and it was just, God.
I agree. Her approach played right into exactly what Juliana Miller wanted to do. I think for me, as somebody that watched every episode, recapped every episode, that's what I saw through the season. It's why I picked Miller going in. It's why I was higher on Miller on the preview show than I was Brogan Walker, right? She's been in there with some competition. We've seen who she's lost to. We've seen who she's beaten. That played out pretty much how I expected. Again, I don't think Juliana Miller is suddenly going to be in the next 2 years a top 15 fighter. 4 years from now, can she be in the lower third of the top 15 with some development and progression? I mean, maybe. I'm willing to give her that time. And that's all I mean about continuing to produce talent, right? we were talking off air before we started and we'll shift to the heavyweights where Mo Usman lands one left hook, proves that, power beats everything else at certain times when you can land it. Zach Pauga is a natural light heavyweight. He will surely go back down. I feel like a moron for not picking, the great big human will hit the less big human, because that's what happened. I actually didn't think Mo Usman had that shot in his bag. I thought the fight would look like the first round throughout. That was my expectation. So congrats to Mo Usman for changing it. But we talked off air about, like, if you threw some of the top competitors to graduate from the Contender Series into the house in that division or in their respective division, they would crush, right? So, like, if you took Jailton Almeida, who has now decided to be a heavyweight because he has another heavyweight fight coming up, and said, great, you're in the house for 6 weeks. Here you go. He smashes everybody. No question. No question. But I mean, Don'Tale Mayes graduated from Contender Series. It took him 3 fucking tries, and we just saw him look like garbage last weekend. So are we really saying that the levels are that different for the middle and below group coming from these shows? That's my argument.
Fuck both shows. Move on.
All right, cool. We'll move on with this show. We'll get to a guy that you mentioned already, Serghei Spivac, who gets a second round TKO finish over Augusto Sakai. You mentioned arguing with Shawnee on the big show about this. I argued with Shawnee on the preview show about this because I genuinely think that Serghei Spivac is continuing to show me things as a 27-year-old who has decided he wants to be better and therefore moved to Las Vegas from Moldova, doesn't really speak a whole lot of English, but wants to learn to be better at the fighting. So went to the place where there are all the fighters and keeps coming out and showing us that he's getting better at the fighting. Like, he manhandled Augusto Sakai for most of 2 rounds. And if we're going to say, yeah, well, he lost to Tom Aspinall. Okay, everybody's lost to Tom Aspinall. Save for Curtis Blades, who didn't have to fight him because Tom's knee went out. If that's the one knock against him, and similar to Geoff Neal, he's got the back pocket win over Tai Tuivasa, who, granted, different Tai Tuivasa than we're seeing now, but certainly aging nicely. Looked really good on paper and more impressive with each Tai Tuivasa performance. Like, I just think this is a guy, again, maybe he's not setting the world on fire and winning championship gold, but can he be the 6th or 7th best heavyweight in the UFC in 2 or 3 more years? I don't know that it's a definite no, and I want to fucking watch to see.
Look, I was impressed with Spivac. I thought that, look, Sakai is not a great fighter, right? He doesn't offer a ton on the feet. He doesn't offer a ton on the ground.
Right.
He's a fighter that if it's going his way, he can do the fighting. But if it's not going his way, it's difficult for him to then turn the corner and start to change the momentum of a fight. I'm just going to bring up my notes, if that's okay. And
absolutely. He's either landing a bomb that's putting you out, or he's getting into, during his 4-fight winning streak to start his UFC career, it went really close fight, split decision, bomb, split decision, bomb. That's kind of who he is. He's either catching you, or it's going to be really kind of grimy, and maybe he's going to come out on the positive side of things.
Sure. So, like, the thing that I have here in my notes are Spivac looks a little less trim this time. I noticed he wasn't as in shape. Now, he didn't cause too much of a problem, but it was just a cursory note. He shoots and hits his first takedown with a lovely inside trip. He goes for a hip grip with the left hand and an over-the-shoulder grip with the right hand, turning Sakai over the inside trip of his right-hand side with that hip grip and with that, like a steering wheel motion, essentially. Turns Sakai over, drops him to the floor. Like, that's really nice. Shawnee's like, these lads are just falling over each other. I'm like, yeah, but Yeah, but they're not though. Like,
Right.
not quite. That it looks like that for sure, and it may not be the cleanest, most beautiful inside trip you've seen, but he knew what he wanted to do and he executed what he wanted to do. Right.
Also, he's moving a 265-pound man. This isn't
Sure.
welterweights or below. This is a gigantic human being that doesn't want to be moved that way.
Sure. So the thing that I was really interested in was the dilemmas that Spivac had when he was passing. So I've made a note here of Spivac. This wasn't the specific takedown of the inside trip, but this was another mat return. Firstly, I'm going to compliment his ability to return Serghei to the mat over and over and over again. I don't like Uchimatas. If you're not a super high level judoka that doesn't allow their hips to land in the position that Egger's hips landed, and his hips landed in some positions, don't fucking do Uchimatas. Just don't do it. Or if you're going to do it, ride the legs through the middle rather than all the way over. Because if you ride over the middle, you can keep the hopping pressure and you can keep top position and all of the things start to work. Anyway, go and watch J-Flow Judo on Instagram. He's far better explaining this shit than I am. The thing that I was impressed with Spivac was his ability to ride the hips when he was in half guard. He'd look for his shots. He'd look for Darcy's. He eventually set up what's called an overback passing. So overback passing in half guard is a method for you to clear the knee shield. So when you're in half guard, the knee shield acts as both a frame to keep you away, but it also can allow an opponent to pull you in if they need to. When the removal of the knee shield comes in as an attacking man on bottom, you can start to look for underhooks, get up, do all of the things that you don't want as the top man. Your job as the person on bottom is to clear that knee shield. Specifically in MMA, it's not that important because obviously you can still frame and you can still land shots and you can still do the fighting. But in grappling, it's imperative that you get rid of the knee shield because if you don't, you're just not going to pass, right? Now, one of the ways that you can do that is by something called an overback grip. So an overback grip is when you switch your hips. So in half guard, generally, your hips are facing your opponent. An overback grip requires you to switch your hips, effectively removing your hips from the knee shield rather than removing the knee shield from your hips. And you then go and get your forearm and you place it over the back. Funnily enough, that's why it's called an overback grip. And you create your tricep and your forearm and you bend the head of your opponent. So you're essentially sat on your opponent's bicep, pulling their head back. This makes it very difficult for them to begin to frame away from you because you're essentially sat on them and you're breaking their posture. So it's hard for them to extend away and use that as a bridging mechanic. In MMA, what Spivac did really well with that is he forced Serghei to move. And when he forced Serghei to move, he then allowed him to get into passing sequences, and he did the passing sequences, and he got into a variety of good positions. In grappling, generally, you're looking to either go back to what's called a smashed out half, which is half guard but with no knee shield, which is a very dominant position for the attacking man, or you can high leg out, or a number of things. But what I was really impressed with was Spivac using genuinely quite technical passing strategies to force Serghei into a loop. What Serghei eventually did from the overback pass is turtle, right? That's an amazing position in MMA if you're the attacking man. Why? Because you can land a ton of shots and your opponent has a very, very visceral dilemma to deal with. Do I get up? And in the time of getting up, I might get mat returned. I might eat a ton of shots. Or do I stay here and the referee's going to finish the fight because I'm not moving anywhere? Or the third option, which just never really happens, is I accept bottom position and I re-roll to my back. That, often doesn't happen. Generally, people understand. But overall, I was just very impressed with Spivac's relentlessness to return Serghei to the mat. I was impressed with Serghei's ability to get back up and his willingness to try to get back up, knowing that clearly this isn't a position that he's dominant in. This isn't a fight that he's going to win by the looks of it. But yeah, I wasn't as down on this fight as Shawnee may have.
It feels to me, and I think Sean's point, and he's made this varied times on various shows, and I'm sure he and I will talk about it when we do State of the Union tomorrow, is that heavyweight feels pretty clearly delineated. That, I think we talked about it when Curtis Blades fought Chris Daukaus in Columbus. Curtis Blades is 4. Chris Daukaus is 11. 4 is going to beat 11. There's nothing that we learn here. Fine. Serghei Spivac is now probably, 12. I'd like to see him against 7. I'd like to see him against 8. You want to show me Serghei Spivac against Jairzinho Rosenstrike? I'm interested. You want to see me against Alexander Volkov? I'm interested. Against Daukaus? I'm interested. I just think 27 in a division where we have fighters that are 34, 35 and upwards and have had a 40-year-old champion very recently in Daniel Cormier. Let's not go saying they're trash and capped out at 27 when they're a year into living in Las Vegas and clearly showing us some stuff, as we saw on Saturday. Was it the best performance? No, it wasn't the oh my God, earth-shattering, this guy's going to be a contender that we've seen from, Ciryl Gane. They don't all have to be the absolute best performance. And I think, and Shawnee and I argued about it a little bit on the preview show. If we're just judging people by, are they going to be a champion or are they going to be championship contender material? And if not, fuck them. Then we're not going to be talking about many people. We're going to be talking about maybe 10% of the competitors in the UFC.
Less.
That might even be generous, 5%. I kind of like talking about more than 5% of these athletes because there's value to them.
The other point of that, and again, this, I completely understand where Sean is coming from, and I think
Agreed.
he's right to talk about the way he's talking about it. I actually agree with him. I don't think Spivac will be a champion. I don't think he has the athleticism. I don't think he has the well-roundedness. I don't think he has the
100%.
But the champions have to beat people to become the champion.
Right.
And I think that divisions aren't divisions without competitors that fill out spots that aren't the champion. And, Sean is absolutely in agreement with that. That's whatever. But I also agree that we must look at fighters and be very, very logical about where they stand in the division. Nobody, and we shouldn't be, is calling Spivac a future champion.
Correct.
I just don't think he has it. I think even at 27 with a bag of room to grow in the heavyweight division, we've already seen what he looks like against elite competition. Right. And I don't think that changes dramatically. I just don't. I've not seen it before, and Same. I don't think anyone's arguing for it.
Same.
But I do like to err on the side that, look, there's one champion at a time. Fuck interim titles, right? Whatever. But there is one champion at a time in every division. And how many divisions are in the UFC? Like 12?
12, 11.
Right. 11, 12. Yeah, because 145 doesn't exist, right? So female 145, that is. The 145 male obviously exists. We're just...
To me, it goes back to what we talked about last week a great deal with Drew Dober, Alex Morono, Drakkar Klose, those guys, right? What I talked about on Monday. We have to spend time and give those people that are tremendous to the ecosystem and important to the life of these divisions the recognition for the value they bring, even as not champions, not contenders. Because as you said, everybody that gets to be a champion has to work their way through some of these people. The odd one doesn't, right? Every so often you get a Jiri Prochazka that jumps in, beats 2 fighters in the top 10, fights for the title, and wins the belt. The far more common route is I start at the bottom and I work my way up slowly, and it takes 5 to 8 fights. And I've got to beat the Serghei Spivacs of the world. I've got to beat the Alex Moronos. Those people have utility, and to just dismiss them because, they're never going to get there feels strange to me. Feels unnecessary to me.
Sure.
All right. Last fight of the main card, Terrance McKinney goes out, does what Terrance McKinney does. Gets it done in the first round. Gets on the mic and says, we don't get paid by the hour. I got to eat, man's got to eat. Gets Erick Gonzalez out of there in the first round. Rear naked choke. We see a little bit of the wrestling. We see a little bit of the grappling. We saw a little bit of the hands. This went as expected. We talked on the preview show about would it maybe be nice to see him get a little bit more time in there. Terrance McKinney is just one of those guys that doesn't want the time. He wants to just go out and get you out of there. And thus far, he's gotten you out of there most of the time. What were your thoughts?
My first note, I'll just read you the first line of my notes for this fight. My first line comes in 8 seconds into the fight, and it says, "We're not going to see 10 minutes here, are we?"
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just not.
He's just not that guy that is ever going to take that approach.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think he's going to be forced to take that approach. You know, Drew Dober showed him that, and this is going to be the very interesting psychological battle and progression and evolution that may happen with Terrance McKinney.
Right.
Quite clearly, your man's an athlete. Quite clearly, he's got some hands. Quite clearly, he can do the fighting, right?
Yes.
The question to me is what happens when he realizes that he is not invincible and that Drew Dober wasn't just I got a bit tired and I got caught and no. What you're going to find out is that at the elite level, the way that you fight doesn't work, right?
Right.
Chimaev found that out against Gilbert Burns.
Right.
He found out that you literally just can't go in there and
smash people
and steamroll motherfuckers, because motherfuckers are just good at not being steamrolled and then coming back and steamrolling you.
Right.
And I think that Terrance McKinney learned earlier than Khamzat Chimaev did, and that speaks to the level of Khamzat Chimaev, obviously, that he has to go in there, and I hope his coaches are in his ear saying, just so you know, dude, that Drew Dober thing wasn't a one-off. That was Drew Dober showing you the level, right? And if he goes in there, when he gets the next Drew Dober-esque assignment, I'd like to see the mental fortitude switch. The reason why I wanted to see it here is just to prove to himself that he could do it, right? Shawnee mentions all the time that one of the things that experience brings you is reference points. And the reference point Terrance McKinney has is the last time he had to go any longer than 5 minutes, he got finished. Now, he didn't get finished here. He looked brilliant, right? He looked really good. And I can jump into some of the technical details of what happened if you want me to. But the thing that I was most impressed with, I think, in this one was he got clipped just before he landed that takedown.
Right.
But the reaction to what happened, I think it was a left hook he got clipped with. He squared his hips up and he shot that double leg so fast.
Right.
So if that's the level with which he can shoot double legs when he's just got clipped, give me more of that. Let me see more of that wrestling that Chiesa is mouth-watering over all of the time. Let me see a bit of that. Let me see the mixed martial arts stuff.
And so what you said at the start of this, of somebody is going to force him to experience those 10 minutes, I think that is a very different thing than him choosing to, right? We talk about Ian Garry, who has said, I need experience. And we all on Severe thought the Darian Weeks fight was 100% going to be, let me go out here and get 15 minutes in this fucking cage. I don't know that Terrance McKinney or his team has an understanding or a mindset or an approach that says, all right, Terrance, you could go out and smash Erick Gonzalez, but what will be better for you long-term when the next Drew Dober comes along is if you go out here and have 15 minutes. I don't think that part is there because I think he thinks of it as, let's just go and get out of here as quickly as possible. It's wonderful when it works. It's amazing for your confidence, for all kinds of things, the highlight reel, whatever. But long-term, it feels like a bad plan because you're going to keep progressing and then somebody is going to go, all right, let's see what you're like. And you said when he had to go more than 5 minutes, it wasn't even more than 5 minutes. Drew Dober said, cool, I'm not done yet. And you're fucking spent after 2 minutes. Come on, big boy. What you got left? Nothing? Good. You're out of here. And if you think you're going to climb the ranks at lightweight, where he shows that he could, right? The positives of the start of that Drew Dober fight show that this kid, with a little bit of refinement and a little bit more poise and understanding, could be on that cusp of top 15 already. But when he gets back there and when the next one comes and it's Arman Tsarukyan, that dude ain't going away in 97 seconds. He's not going away in 3 minutes. As great as this is, it kind of just feels like a throwaway to me. And that's not to take away from the performance, right? Because as you said, there's a load of technical things in there that are amazing. When he hit that double, I started laughing in my den because it's just like, as you said, he got clipped and the response was, well, fuck that. I'm going to just take this where you can't beat me. And I'm going to put you on the ground and I'm going to instantly move to half and I'm going to start smashing you. And then I'm going to posture up and fine, you kicked me off. But as you get up, I'm just going to get on your back. And here I can do the choking bits. The skill is there. Like, he was my fighter to watch. I'm on board. I'm big on, I want a bunch of the Terrance McKinney stock. But I tell you what, before the next top 15 fight, we're going to have us a fire sale. And whoever wants it can have it. Because until he figures some of the longer term stuff out, there's going to be those Drew Dober fights. That's my takeaway from Saturday.
Yeah, dog. Like, the reason I agree and the reason that I think that this is just a little short-sighted is that the upside to Terrance McKinney is quite clearly very large. Right? Quite clearly, he's okay at the fighting.
Yes.
Yeah. But you have to realize that, one, the UFC don't fuck around. They're not going to wait for you
to
sort this shit out. They are going to move on if you're not ready when they want you to be ready. And for me, watching him, you're only going to get a certain amount of chances at this.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
You only get the Drew Dober test 3 times.
Right. Look at Nasrat Haqparast, right? For years. Wow, wait till this guy, he just figured out, okay, that one was too early. That one was too quick. Let him reset. Okay, he got a couple good wins. Now let's test him again. He lost that one. Well, he's only 26. Now where's Nasrat Haqparast?
Right.
Fighting on the prelims. If he gets there, he gets there, and he needs like 4 straight wins to even get a.
Now it's the hard road, right?
Yeah.
The hard road is ahead of Nasrat Haqparast, and that's a problem because we were all very high on Nasrat Haqparast, and Faraz Sahabi was singing his praises, and I once saw him in Montreal in his big coat, and he looked massive and whatever, but Terrance McKinney, I think, needs to realize what's in front of him in the way that Ian Garry does.
Yes.
Right? Ian Garry is like, look, I might finish dudes. I might not. But what I am going to do is when the Drew Dober comes, I'm going to be ready for it.
Right.
And I might not win, but I'm going to be in the best position for me to win.
Right.
Because I'm going to know what it feels like to go 15 minutes multiple times. I'm going to know what it feels like for me to do some offensive grappling. I'm going to know what it feels like to have myself pressed up against that fence and to have a guy on my legs. And I'm going to have to know how to split my stance. And I'm going to have to know what it feels like to deal with the athlete. I'm going to know what it feels like to deal with the wrestler. I'm going to know what it feels like to deal with the striker. I'm going to know what it feels like to deal with the other up and coming young prospect, whatever. I'm going to know what it feels like to deal with the big hitter. And then whoever it is, whoever fills that slot on that assignment, on that day, on that card, is going to come up and they're going to be in with a UFC caliber prospect. Terrance McKinney, count your sheep while they're there, my friend.
It feels like Terrance McKinney approaches it from a me at my best at all times. And that sort of belief of, like we talked about with Jamahal Hill, of, I can just beat all of these guys. Well, Drew Dober already proved that that's not the case. And you can tell yourself, well, short notice and whatever. Ian Garry is looking at it from a, Well, if I fought them now, they beat the shit out of me. So how do I make sure that when I fight them, they don't beat the shit out of me? And I have a very good chance of winning.
Just, in my opinion, just the perfect way to look at it. Because Ian Garry will also tell you, without a hint of doubt, I will be the world champion one.
Right. Right.
But he's approaching it in a cerebral manner where he understands his deficiencies. He's put himself in a room that he believes is going to be the best room to get him to the position he wants to be in. He's not, from what he says, we can't vouch for this, obviously, but what he says and what his social media looks like, he's not taking the hard rounds off. He's not putting himself in positions where he's taking, he's beating on guys that he shouldn't be beating on, or he's not taking rounds against guys that, aren't going to give him something to think about. Here we are.
He's not avoiding the Michael Chandler moments. He's in there getting mashed and he's dealing with it. He is, to me, almost reverse engineering his path to this is where I want to get to. Now let me go back and figure out all the steps that it's going to take. And the first one is get my ass handed to me and learn how to deal with all of the negative that can come, because he knows what the positives are. He knows what the good things he brings to the octagon are. Terrance McKinney looks at the good things he brings to the octagon and says, this will be all right to get me by. And as much as I am high on those positives that he brings, need you to work on the other bits, because those are the bits that are going to actually get you to where you need to go. And if he proves me wrong, 100% be here. Mea culpa. I was wrong. Congratulations, T-Rex. But from experience, from 10, 12 years of watching this, there aren't many guys that just continue to go forward untested, steamroll through everybody. It doesn't happen. Speaking of guys steamrolling through other people, Michał Oleksiejczuk steamrolled Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey now on the longest winless streak in UFC history. His contract is done. The biggest takeaway for me of this fight, never mind. I mean, I already knew going in that Michał Oleksiejczuk was going to be a nice little addition to 185, where we can always enjoy another boxer, another 27-year-old with a little bit of upside, whatever. The takeaway for me, and it's somewhat jocular, it's somewhat playful, is what the fuck are you doing with your 6 kids there? Like, Shawnee made the point. I got a couple text messages last night of like, why are his kids there? And it's 6 kids under the age of 10 that just watched daddy get his head bashed in. Again, the eldest has probably been there for most of this losing streak, or winless streak, I should say, because there's the draw with Da Eun Jung. I just don't get it. I didn't understand. I mean, look, for all the jokes, for all of the everything, I think Sam Alvey has been a good soldier. He has done all the right things in terms of what the UFC wants from an athlete. This has got to be the end. And this should probably be the end of the line, period. And I really feel like we're going to see Sam Alvey in, BKFC, or just makes me sad. Not only did his kid see him get his ass handed to him, but he's just going to keep going out there.
Is Sam Alvey the most exploited fighter in the UFC?
No, because Sam Alvey wants all of this.
But does he though?
Yeah.
Yeah, but does he? So, okay. So, Jesus, I maybe shouldn't say this on a podcast, but here we go. It feels to me as though Sam Alvey has been manipulated.
Timestamp this just in case.
It feels to me as though Sam Alvey has been manipulated into wanting things more than he actually wants them. It feels to me, from listening to him on social media, from watching him over his career, he is a guy that is desperate to please fans, to please the company, and believes that in being the company man, that good will come of it. nothing good comes of being the company man in the UFC. Nothing good comes to losing 17 fights in a row. Nothing good comes from having your children watch their father get destroyed by a guy who is at best middling in any of the divisions that he's in. It is not good to walk away with 75K in your back pocket and maybe a little something underneath as a thank you from the UFC if you are absolutely lucky. He put an article, there was an article out recently where he was saying he wants a farm. He sold his house, got 100 grand profit or whatever it was. He wants all the kids in the world and he's got 400 grand to his name. Dog, that's not enough. That's not enough for multiple things. It's not enough to live your life on with these aspirations you have of family and whatever. It is not enough for what you've given to the UFC. It is not enough. If you go and look at his Instagram, the shape he was in, the trauma he was going through to make weight for this, he said it was the second worst weight cut of his life. And this man's had nearly 50 fights, if not over 50 fights.
More than 50. Yep.
Right. More than 50 fights, and this is the second hardest weight cut of his career. Dude, it's not enough. And I feel like, yes, independent contractors. Yes, fuck weight cutting. Yes, fighter unionization, whatever. Somebody has to go to Sam Alvey and say, dude, you get fucked up in training by Sean Strickland all the time. You put a video of you getting battered by Sean Strickland just so he could test out his new drone at the end of you reviewing 1975. Yeah, I went on the rabbit hole of Sam Alvey's YouTube. And what? Like, this is a guy that needed 10 fights ago somebody to put their arm around him and be like, dude, let's have a chat. And this is what happens when the UFC is allowed to do the UFC thing. And this is what happens when people around fighters aren't looking after them sufficiently. Because I'm sorry, I understand. And I know you're going to come back with an argument, but I'm not hearing it. Because this is a man's life we're talking about.
100% agree.
This is 6 kids that will never, ever, ever be able to stop thinking at some point about their father being laid out, almost unconscious, being mercifully saved by a referee in a fight that he had no business being in for 75 G's that he won't even see because of taxes, coaches' fees, gym's fees, and the rest of it. Fuck that.
I don't disagree with any of that. I'm not going to sit here and push back vehemently on anything that you said. 100% somebody should have, whether it's his wife, whether it's his coaches, whether it's his best friend, whoever, somewhere along this 8 or 9 fight winless streak, should have said, yeah, it's enough, Sam. 1, you're not getting paid enough. 2, you're getting older. You've got 6 kids now. They're all under the age of 10. Like, fuck that. 100% with you. I would love it if the UFC at some point went to Sam Alvey and went, hey, man, nope, we're just not doing this anymore. I wish when the UFC came to him and said, hey, what about 85? He said, nah, man, I'm 36. I ain't fucking cutting to 85. I can't do that shit anymore. Getting to 205 is tough. I don't want to. I wish all of these things happened. I wish that Sam Alvey didn't think that $97,000, which is what he essentially told ESPN this week he would make even if he lost. I wish he understood that in the grand scheme of things for life and what he's putting his body through, that it is nowhere near enough money. All of those things said, here's this fucking, like, I'm on the brink of breaking down here. I'm on the brink, like I'm pausing because the welling up is happening. So here's what I'll say. We have this fucking industry that is just this wheel, right? It's just the churn. It's just the complex that happens. There's a lot of hands that want to get fed, that make decisions. There's a lot of hands that want to grab into the pie, that make decisions based on what is going to help them versus what is going to help these athletes. I also think, first and foremost in that, though, is that the athletes do not fucking help themselves. Almost ever. And that's where when we get into here are all of the people who are to blame and who are at fault for allowing this to happen. Agreed. That athlete can say, fuck, like, you don't have to be, like, it's easier for John Jones to do it, right? And say, I'm out. I don't want your shitty pay. I want to fight at heavyweight. This is who I want to fight. And until you give me X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to post IG photos of me getting swole. Right? Most of these dudes can't do that. They are not in that position. They don't want to either. Like, at some point, I know we all want to fight and argue and scream about it's not enough money, because it's not. It just isn't. We all know that. But at some point, when Sam Alvey comes out and says, I'm going to make $97,000 on Saturday night, and I'm pretty fucking stoked about that, we have to just go, well, like, what do we do? No, Sam, you're not allowed to go out there because I want you to get 4 times that. Well, I want him to get 4 times that, but if he's going to take that.
And this is partially why I question, I mean, me saying, is he the most exploited fighter in the UFC is quite clearly hyperbole, right? But like, the reason I'm saying it is because there is a deficiency of education here, and it's people like Sam Alvey that fall through the cracks.
So I don't think there's a deficiency of education. I think there is a deficiency of fucking care.
Sure.
Like, I think a lot of these guys, you could sit them down and you could lay out all of the reasons why they should be paid infinitely more. And a lot of them will go, yeah, but I'm happy. And it sucks. I hate accepting. You and I fucking fought yesterday about me. And me going, yeah, but I understand and I'm happy. And you went, nah, man, fuck that. You're not happy. You need better. And I was like, look, bro, I appreciate it. I love you. It means a lot to me that you want to fight for me while I'm advocating against myself. But like, I'm okay. This is a battle I don't have to fight.
Fuck that, kick rocks.
But that's where most of these guys are at, right? And so it's awesome. And this isn't me saying I don't ever want you or me or fucking everybody to stop having this discussion and stop wanting to fight on behalf of these men and women in the UFC and beyond, wherever the fuck they are fighting. And that's the other part of this. I'm going to look dead in the camera. And this is a moment that we haven't clipped anything from this show ever. I'm going to clip this moment. Every one of you motherfuckers that is out there saying that the UFC are a bunch of assholes for not paying enough money, you're right, but make sure you call out every other promotion there is, because none of these sons of bitches get paid enough anywhere, ever. Don't just make this about the UFC because they're the big bad monster and they're the big bad engine at the top of all of this. Bellator doesn't pay shit. Cage Warriors isn't paying guys billions of dollars. For as great as the $1 million at the end of PFL is for the one person that gets it, and if you're Kayla Harrison, you're the only person that fucking gets it in that division, it's not like they're making 100,000-aires regularly either. Now, some of their names, getting some good money. Brendan Loughnane, getting good money. It's good money. Should it be more? Yeah. Yes. Same as everywhere else. So don't just make this about the UFC. Don't just make this about the billion-dollar company should be paying more. Every company should be paying more. The company you write for should be paying you more. The company I write for should probably be paying me more. If we're going to have this fucking fight, let's have it. Let's have it equally. Let's have it across every fucking field for every single fucking person. Don't just pick and choose. Don't just make it about the 1 or 2 people that you want to advocate for. Make it about everybody. Then I will 100% stand with you. And I'll help lead the fight. I love fighting. Love it. Arguing with people, bring it all on.
Don't say that.
But what we're not going to do is pick and choose who we're fighting for and who we're advocating for and who deserves fair and reasonable treatment. So if we want to say Sam Alvey's underpaid and this shit shouldn't be happening for Sam Alvey, 100%. Same goes for everybody in every other promotion.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I know. I just hate I hate the picking and choosing. And yes, look, again, straight to the camera. I, for 10 years, have been a freelance contributor to the UFC website. I get a check deposited in my bank account every 4 weeks from Zuffa LLC. So you can call me a shill. You can say I'm standing up for them, whatever. Cool, great. Did you not just hear me say I should be paid more too? And all of these fuckers should be paid more. This isn't about supporting them and defending them. It's about wanting consistency and evenness from all. Because it's not just the one company that is bad at this. All of them are bad at this. All of them don't do as much as they could, should, or need to do by the people that put on the thing that they do. And all I ask, all I want is some balance in it. Because it is, as always, all about balance. Let's breeze through the rest of these fights. Bryan Battle goes out, defeats Takashi Sato. Head kick knockout. Lovely finish. Lovely. You had points. I need to take some water and cool down, so I'm going to let you have some points about Bryan Battle's finish.
So the thing that was really impressive about Bryan Battle's finish was that he made a read on Takashi Sato really early. And something that you find in elite fighters, or just really good fighters, cerebral fighters specifically, are that they're able to make reads and then execute game plan changes based on those reads. Now, was it in Bryan Battle's game plan to land head kicks? Maybe. But what he did do is he saw that Sato drops his left hand when he throws jabs. So there was one very early head kick attempt that he threw that I think Sato blocks. And I think then Battle's like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll get you the next time. Takashi Sato throws a jab. Bryan Battle throws a right hand and very Edmund Shabazian-esque leaves the high kick behind it, cleanly lands on Sato's jaw, head, cranium, skull area, and just flatlines him. Gorgeous. Mark Smith twice was late to finishes. I'm not going to be super angry with him for those things, but I do think you have to be standing a little closer to the action because as and when things happen, there was no need for Sato to take the first coffin nail. The second one was a lot less, but there was no need. He was out,
Right.
and I understand that Goldilocks zones for finishes are very difficult. We've talked about this multiple times. However, Mark Smith was the opposite side of the cage.
Right.
And I also understand, look, at the very beginning of a fight, who knew that a head kick was coming? That's also not an excuse. It's your job to be ready if the first punch of the fight lands and KOs somebody. But I was impressed with Battle's ability to make adjustments on the fly and find reads and punish them. Very, very, very impressed. However, I thought he looked awkward on the feet, and I thought that in his range and stance, he looked awkward and off. I'll be interested to see what he looks like in 2 or 3 fights' time to see whether we can work out those kinks. But if you show me a fighter that can make cerebral adjustments in fights and punish fighters for them, all right, I see you.
And so to me, to tie it back into what we talked about with the Ultimate Fighter, obviously he's winner last year in the middleweight division, has now dropped down to welterweight, but he's sort of another one of those representations to me of the talent that we're getting. He's not, I don't think this is progressing to championship level. He's 27 already, still pretty green. And so it would have to be leaps and bounds over the next 3 to 5 years for him to get to that point. That said, can he be a middle of the pack welterweight for the next 4, 5, 6 years, add some stuff on, develop some things? As you said, we saw some intangibly quality, intelligent pieces on Saturday. that are positives, that are building blocks. Same as you. I'm all for it. Let me see the next one. Let me see what comes, because this has been 3 wins, right? Won the finale, beats Tresean Gore, now beats Takashi Sato. Let's just see where this goes. No rush, no anything like that. Let's just see what's there. Women's strawweight, Cory McKenna goes out and does what Cory McKenna should do and grapple, and dumps Miranda Granger to the ground and gets the Flue Choke, the first female in UFC history to complete it. I believe the 5th fighter to get one in the octagon. This is what we were looking for from Cory McKenna in London, correct? Just go out and do the grapples.
I'm right. You know, Cory McKenna is going to be one of those fighters that could desperately use an atomweight division in the UFC.
100%.
She is very small, not large from a stature perspective either, from a broadness perspective,
right?
And is obviously quite small. However, when she gets to the grappling positions, she looks great. You know, she chains her grappling together really, really well. She's very dominant on top. Her passing was lovely, and she noticed in the first round that Granger had a tendency to leave her arm in a position for either head and arms. And I think she then knew that the moment she offered a guillotine, Granger would snatch it. And immediately as Cory McKenna took Granger down, she locked her hands together in a gable, which trapped the guillotine arm in. And you could see then Granger was like,
I'm trying to get it out. She said to her corner, I'm trying to get it out.
Yeah, like, we got problems here. We've got big problems. Right. And all she had was her right arm, which was a stiff arm post that McKenna just wore down and wore down and wore down and wore down. And here we are. You get Flue choked. And the same panic that you see from most fellas that get Flue choked was written across Granger's face. So fair play to Cory McKenna.
So I understand the mechanics of how it works, the Flue choke. We always sort of, whenever it happens, right, the commentary team does the it's day 1 white belt shit. Shouldn't ever happen. Walk me through that a little bit. Because I don't think in this instance particular, it was as simple as Miranda Granger is holding on to this thing and just won't let go because she's stubborn and dumb. I think, as you said, Cory McKenna has it trapped. And it's stuck in, and you just can't get it out.
So, no, the commentary team are right. Miranda Granger's an idiot.
Okay.
Look,
all right.
At any point, to use guillotines as a deterrent for being taken down, unless you're Nick Lentz, who's able to get your hips away, and if you're able to get butterfly hooks in, it is a very, very risky strategy. Very risky. Because the Flues are available and whatever. But also, if you hold on to a guillotine and Cory McKenna sits her body to the opposite side that you're attempting to guillotine, it takes all the pressure off, and you've now given up an underhook, right? So even if you don't get Flued, positionally, as I fall out of my chair, positionally, it's a very silly thing to try to do, right? When you know that your hips are being pulled away from you and you realize that you're getting taken down, which Miranda Granger had plenty of time to see because she was taken away from the cage as she was taken down, there is plenty of time to let go of that guillotine and let go of the guillotine she should be doing. Guillotines do not allow you to get back up unless you have butterfly hooks. There was no way she was going to have butterfly hooks because Cory McKenna took her hips away. So whilst McKenna capitalized on the mistake very, very well, it was a large mistake for Miranda Granger to hold on to that.
Fair. Thank you for the explanation. Opening fight of the night. Didn't last very long. Was all kinds of controversial, sort of. Mayra Bueno Silva gets a first-round submission win over Stephanie Egger by armbar that no one officially through the broadcast yet has seen a tap from. So Bueno Silva gets her stuck in the armbar. we'll get to the, hey, don't try an Uchimata because you end up where you end up. Bueno Silva, happy to be on the ground, attacks the armbar. Egger starts doing the right things and then gets stuck. Not quite. The arm is almost belly down, but nothing else is. She's kind of just stuck in there. Bueno Silva relaxes and lets go and says she tapped. Stephanie Egger kind of just does the like, who tapped? And looks around like, why are we stopping? What is anybody going to believe this? We go through the processes. One of the officials, at cage side, Ron McCarthy says, no, I 100% saw a tap. We're good. Bueno Silva gets the win. Doesn't want to shake hands afterwards. I thought that was dope. I appreciated that. Has a good cry about, don't be pulling this shit in the cage. I'm trying to do good things for kids, show them the right way, and you're pulling this bullshit. That's 2 good wins since moving down for Mayra Bueno Silva, who looks to me, this was to me a let's see who moves forward. I want to see her keep moving forward. Thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you give your arm to Bueno Silva in those sorts of positions, you're asking for trouble. You know what I mean? You're just asking for trouble. And look, I won't harp on the Uchimata stuff too much, but the real reason why an Uchimata is dangerous is because you're sitting your hips to the ground at the same time your opponent's hips are on the ground. And if you don't then find underhooks, which you haven't, because generally you're giving your opponent a back body lock, you're in a scramble at that point. Now, if you're Ronda and you can land an Uchimata into an armbar, grand. You do the things. You do the fighting. No problem.
All the way over into a scarf hold kind of headlock, something.
Right. But if you're doing what Egger and Spivac's doing and whatever, there are absolutely chances that you get your back taken. At the very best, you're ending up in a scramble for an underhook. Now, whilst you do have most of the time superior head position, if the person underneath you is more athletic, you might just fuck yourself.
Right.
So it's not a great thing to be doing. I certainly don't encourage it unless you are so proficient at that technique that you can land on top and you can ensure your landing of on top.
Yeah. Or you're so athletic that you're going to win that scramble.
Right. And I don't think there are many people in the UFC that can hand on heart say that. If so, just don't do it. Don't take the risk. It's not worth it. It's a really high risk position, specifically in MMA, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the transition to the armbar was nice. It's obviously a closed guard armbar because female MMA. And frankly, I have no problem with everything that happened. I thought Cristiano Toioni managed the whole situation brilliantly.
Agreed.
Shawnee broke that down for me on the big podcast because I didn't really understand the nuts and bolts of it, but he did everything right, exactly as he should have done. And if one of the judges sees the tap, dude, they saw you tap, And actually, obviously I didn't listen to it on commentary or anything like that, but when I looked at Egger's reaction, she certainly didn't look like somebody that was going to protest this thing to the nth degree.
Right.
You see some guys and they get finished. Derek Lewis, right? Derek Lewis, hits the floor.
The Pavlovich fight.
Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I was fine in
right.
there. And I mean, he wasn't fine at all, but like, he was incensed.
When you think you've been aggrieved,
right,
you voice it right away. I was watching back one of the Contender Series fights for a guy that's fighting next weekend in San Diego. Gets the finish, and the guy says, the guy that he defeated says, where was the tap? I didn't tap. And like looked at the referee and was like, look, I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm not mad. Like, here's where we are. It's fine. I'm not going to go nuts, but I didn't tap. He even at least, like, it wasn't a wild, mad Derek Lewis protest, but he still protested and was like, you need to explain this to me. Stephanie Egger was just like, I'm going to let this ride out and see if I can maybe get a restart here.
And this is what I thought. Now, I asked Shawnee on the podcast what happens if nobody sees it. And Shawnee's like, well, it's a no contest because they can't fight. So, she wouldn't have got what she wanted.
No.
Anyway, however, the armbar was pretty dead to rights for me.
Yeah.
It was smushed up against the fence. Her elbow was seemingly in line with the hips of Bueno Silva, who had double wrist control of the arm. She wasn't in a good spot, lads.
And that was the point that Bisping made on comms. That was what he said is, I don't even need to see a tap there because I know what that armbar feels like. I know where it's going. I know what we're getting to if she didn't tap. And that is Tim Sylvia, Frank Mir.
Yeah.
That thing pops and you're not fighting for 12 months.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% that Chris Taioni handled it perfectly. He called for the replay. He went around. He pulled the judges. That thing that he did where he was going to each of the spots, it's called pulling the judges. And to your point of when one of them says they saw it, he walked over after talking to Ron McCarthy and went to the next judge and said, Ron said he saw it. And that judge's words were, good for me. Perfect. We criticize referees and officials all the time. We got to give them their props. When they do it right, they handled that expertly. Which brings us to the end of the card. We're done. 10 fights, 10 finishes, some takeaways, some yelling and arguing and being angry in the middle about fighters and pay and all of those things, which are important to be angry and yelly about at times. And we get to re-rack this and start over towards UFC Fight Night. Can't remember what it is, but it's in San Diego.
Cruz Vera.
Marlon Vera versus Dominic Cruz. I just mean the numbering. I just call it UFC San Diego. It's easier for me. It's an interesting fight card. It's good. It's got some quality moments on it. We will be talking about it here. Before we get out of here, Severe Spotlight tomorrow. Who are we talking about?
Geoff Neal.
Geoff Neal. Hands of steel. Very deserving. We will be back. I will be back tomorrow on the podcast. Harry and I and Ian and Shawnee, maybe. Shawnee's always a question mark for the preview show. We'll be recording the preview show on Wednesday for publication on Thursday. Hit us with questions on the Severe Twitter page or our own Twitter pages. If you have anything that you want us to address, either about the card itself, somebody on the card, things like that, hit us up. We like answering questions when we get the opportunities. Go follow him at BJJ_Harry Powell. Check out the Spotlight tomorrow on Geoff Neal. Check him out on the Severe Patreon page, where there will be a Speaker's Corner this week. He's on the Big Show. Go check him out. Back-to-back weeks on the Big Show. Look at you. All grown up. All grown up. Check out Ian. Check out Shawnee. Check out all the stuff over there. It's close to the start of the month, so it's very much worth it. It's worth it regardless. It's always great. Check out me at Spencer Kyte. We'll be back all week with a bunch of stuff. Tons of stuff over on UFC.com as well. Piece on Sunday on Marlon Chito Vera and his progression, not on Sunday, on Friday, on Marlon Chito Vera about his progression over the years for OSDBsports.com. And that's it, man. That's another one in the books. Episode 21. Shout out to the people at One Bone. Go check them out, onebone.com. It's great gear. Keeps me looking fresh, like I said. 4 years. Happy anniversary, boys. Appreciate you. It's been a long week. Settled in, though. We got a backdrop. We got some stuff. We got some new gear. You're sending me some gear. I ordered more gear. We're kitting this out, folks. Go check out the YouTube page. Harry's making me do work on the YouTube page. It will continue to get better. Just look for Keyboard Kimura on YouTube. We appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. We love you. Be good to one another. See you next Sunday.